All right, cool. Recorded, started. Cool. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining to the final Azure Arc community meetup for 2022. It's been a heck of a year. We started the meetup this year with Chris Sanders still, leading this meetup. Then I took over. Chris, for those of you who don't know, he actually retired and basically gave a lot of his R&Rs, just kind of split between the teams. So I'm privileged to be able to talk to you all on a monthly basis and lead this community with the awesome speakers that we have. This meetup, again, there's no change, still full agenda, pretty packed. Next meetup, we're not going to have, or next month, we're not going to have any meetup. We'll take some break for the holidays and we'll come back swinging in January. So with that, just a few housekeeping stuff. Mute your microphone. Please be respectful to the speakers and your peers on the call and everyone that are joining. This call is recorded and will be available afterwards in both the GitHub repository and the Jumpstart YouTube channel, as always. We have the GitHub repository. For those of you who don't know, or internal, you can share this within your communities or in social media. This is the new GitHub repository. It's not new anymore. This is the GitHub repository. We're going to keep updating and putting all the decks and the recordings and everything that's got to do with the community in this GitHub repository. So with that, a few things on the agenda today. Thomas is going to kick us off with community updates. I'll talk about some updates when it comes to the Jumpstart. Then we're going to have the product group for servers, Automanage, Arc-enabled SQL Server and data services to wrap things up, and then some time for Q&A. Feel free to unmute yourself in the Q&A section or put some things in the chat if you have any questions. Everyone are here to answer. We have a bunch of PMs on the call to take questions. So with that, Thomas, I think I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lior. I want to share two updates from the community sites where we were involved and we are building a little bit more on that. So the first one being the Azure Hybrid Community AMA, like Ask Me Anything. We did already run that twice. And basically what we're doing is we're trying to get a more interactive experience, right? We have these awesome community calls here running where you get all the latest and greatest updates from the product groups. But we also want to open it up even more to make sure that we have some sort of a conversation. And so we are looking forward in running that more in the future. We already had two of these AMA on Twitter, where basically we just have conversations. People can ask their questions and can talk about certain things. And so you can see we had, for example, one very overview one, and then we had one on AKS Hybrid, which is especially interesting because of all the announcements also we had at Microsoft Ignite a while back. So we had a lot of interest there from customers and the community, especially talking to the product group itself, like Abhilasha, for example, from the AKS Hybrid teams, who owns features such as the lifecycle management from the Azure portal for the Azure Kubernetes cluster, was there to answer questions. So that was exciting. We will have that also. That's also hosted on the Git repo. Similar to where you find all the other community stuff Lior just showed you. So you find also there when we schedule the next one, or you can follow on Twitter, you will also see more on that. We will see when we host the next one. They usually come up. They're not long time planned ones, but we will send those as well. So Chris, who was also a guest in a couple of those, it was really exciting to host that. And we also have Microsoft MVPs, which we'll talk about on the next slide right now, which are also joining that call. We worked on bringing the Azure Hybrid MVPs a little bit closer together. So for those who are not familiar with the Microsoft MVP program, this is actually an award we do send out to individuals who did a great work over the last 12 months, focusing on a Microsoft technology, right? With all their passions, sharing their learning, sharing their information with the community on different platforms and channels and different types of content, and they get awarded. And so we have that across Microsoft. I think right now they're across Microsoft, there are over 4,000 MVPs. This is a long time program. I think we have that for probably over 20 years, maybe even more. And so what we did is actually we created that focus group of Microsoft MVPs and renamed the contribution area to Azure Hybrid, which includes Azure Arc, Azure Stack, AKS Hybrid, and other technologies. And so these MVPs who are creating content in that, we basically help to create a focus group where we hold regular PGIs, which are called product group interactions, where they basically have an NDA with Microsoft as well, so we can share in these calls some information with them, which we can't usually talk publicly. So if you're interested, obviously check out the MVP page to learn more about what an MVP is. And if you are already an MVP and you're interested in joining the Azure Hybrid focus group or the MVPs focused on Azure Hybrid technologies, please reach out to us to make sure that we can see if that makes sense for you to be also in that group as well. So with that, thank you very much. These were some updates I want to share. Back to Lior.
Thanks, Thomas. All right. Yeah, definitely. MVP is super important program. So I look forward to seeing more MVPs joining us. All right. Azure Arc Jumpstart. So following the previous release, which was the October release, that was the release that was post-Ignite. So obviously a pretty packed release when we announced RBox for Data Ops and HCI Box. And following that, there was a lot of things in the backlog that we wanted to get to. We knew that we're going to push that for the November release. So with that, let's just get started. In this release, we have 10 updated scenarios. So those are not new scenarios, but definitely refactored scenarios. So you can see those scenarios in that list across the board. That's a pretty busy slide with a lot of details. But the TLDR is that we have one refactor scenario for Azure Arc-enabled servers with private link, 3 Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes refactored scenarios. The big thing about those refactored scenarios for Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes is that we decided to, if you've been following the code, you've been following the project, you know that for Rancher K3S, we used to use an open source project called Ketchup, and we decided to deprecate that usage in that project just because of the supportability of the project. And we wanted to move into the upstream Rancher installation method. So that's what we did. And as of now, all the Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes and data services and RBox and everything that is basically using Rancher K3S behind the scenes is now using Rancher upstream installation method. 6 updated Azure Arc-enabled data services scenarios. So those scenarios, basically, you can see that the 3 scenarios that we have for Google and also 3 scenarios that we have for micro Kubernetes, and more scenarios are coming in terms of refactoring data services. Those refactor scenarios for data services include multiple things, but the biggest thing that we just kind of included in those scenarios is optimizations around the compute horsepower that you're using behind the scenes. So you will not get charged more than you actually need to in case you're using those scenarios, especially if you're not, if you're not a Microsoft FTE or if you're just using Google because you want to test things. I want to make sure that you're not overpaying. And also few optimization in the context of security. Again, all the full release notes are in the links, so you can go and check PR by PR and see the issues that were resolved as part of that. But basically, those updates are designed to make sure that you're getting the latest and greatest. Also, the data services scenarios include the latest release for Azure Arc-enabled data services in terms of the container images. So that's already aligned to the November release that the team already pushed. So just want to make sure that everyone are aware of that. In addition to the refactored scenarios, we also had multiple updates in the context of security. As we grew with the project, we always said that security is top of mind for us, but not every time or every sprint we can get to the point that we can fix everything. So we are just kind of optimizing piece by piece, and we're getting closer to just kind of nailing down all the things that we really want. So we're focusing right now on making sure that all the scenarios are aligned with the latest code in terms of Bastion, just-in-time access, and also removing the requirement or prerequisite to have a public IP, your public IP that you're using in the deployment. So you will be able to either RDP or SSH to the VMs that are deployed as part of the scenarios. So that's something that we already did in this release. Also, optimized language for SSH public key prerequisite. This is probably the top, we were also surprised by that, but this is probably the top, the number one issue that we saw throughout the years in the Jumpstart, that people were struggling with the generation of the SSH key, as they need this public key in order to troubleshoot things, an SSH to virtual machines that they are deploying. So we took the language that we had, we optimized it a bit, added some screenshots, again, in the Jumpstart standardization, making sure that there is no room for mistake, and we can basically address those questions before they even pop. Jumpstart RBox, couple of optimizations or fixes. One, we added the data ops for RBox data ops. We added log separation. So in the initial release that we had last release, basically all the logs were just kind of mashed together. What we did is we did some separation, doing some housekeeping and cleanup on that, so it will be easier for you to share the logs with us in case you need to troubleshoot something. And also we fixed all the workbooks that we had for RBox. We had some bugs that we found along the way and some code changes that were happening and drifting in context of ARM. So we fixed that. And Jumpstart HCI box, few minor README updates as part of this release. Again, there's going to be multiple things coming in HCI box that we are excited to share with you next year. But for now, in this release, only few README updates that were incorporated. This is all the updates that I have for this month. Again, all the links are going to be shared in the description of the YouTube video, and all the emails for the team, as you can see, are here on the screen. With that, I'm going to take us to Arnav and Pradesh. Arnav, do you want to take us away?
Sure, sounds great. I'm Arnav, one of the product managers for Arc-enabled servers, and I'll be joined by Prasid as well from the WAC side. So we have a little holiday treat for you in a wacky wonderland during the holiday season. So with our connected machine agent version 1.24, this is going to be coming out, I think, tomorrow before November end. Wanted to kind of provide some updates. There was an update to the guest configuration component critical to the connected machine agent, with improvements in terms of our extension state files, some of our error handling, as well as environmental variable improvements as well. Specifically with those environmental variables, we changed the version type from string to integer in Windows to align with our Linux and compute types as well. We're also going to be sending reports when there are extension failures with download and validation, and we're checking to verify if GPG and OpenSSL are installed on Linux, as well as adding PowerShell environment variables to track usage on Linux as well. So there's quite a few little fixes to the guest configuration component I wanted to call out. The next thing we wanted to call out were quite a few logging enhancements, which you'll be noticing. There's a now new full option for our logs command, and that's going to come included with extension logs and journal logs for XTD and GCAD processes included as well. Additionally, we want to note that app insights logging actually has been removed as well. So that's something else you might notice. Next component is around proxy configuration. We know a lot of customers continue to use proxy connectivity. And so there was a proxy bypass bug that there is a fix for. And additionally, there's going to be detection of any proxy discrepancies noted between AZCM agent and HIMDS, because this was another kind of popular request. The final pieces I wanted to note were from an onboarding perspective. There's going to be stack HCI detection logic improvements, as well as HCI hybrid connectivity and guest config registration attempts, only in the case that they're not registered, which is a slight improvement from before. So those were some of the main callouts I had in terms of our agent version, which you'll find very shortly released November end. Some other updates, and this is kind of forward-looking within the December timeframe, is we're going to have group policy onboarding, specifically group policy using DPAPI-based encryption that's going to be available on the Azure portal. So just like you would go through our process in order to generate a script that can onboard your machines at scale using a service principal, you're actually going to be able to generate a group policy object at scale, and it's going to guide you through how you can deploy and execute that group policy object. And that's going to include encryption of that service principal secret, so you can do that securely at scale across your domain, across your organizational unit, however you want to kind of organize your AD kind of structure. And so that'll allow you to onboard at scale and onboard more easily, which is a kind of core focus area. And so we currently have that documented already, and we're just going to be expanding that. And I believe Prasid is on the call. And so Prasid, you want to talk a little bit about some of our networking enhancements in our study?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thanks, Arnav. Hey, good morning, good evening, folks. So, us as the, Azure Arc or Azure Stack HCI, essentially Azure Arc as a whole team, have been thinking about how we can make connectivity to Azure simple, right? At the moment, for folks that are leveraging proxies or, leveraging any sort of firewall, you have to open various outbound firewall rules to communicate with all of the various Azure services to make Arc work end to end, right? I think the documentation for Azure Arc-enabled servers lists about 16 endpoints. Arc-enabled Kubernetes lists about 15 or so. I know Azure Stack HCI lists over 100 endpoints. There's all of these endpoints that you have to open to make connectivity to Azure happen so that you can actually, use Arc or use Azure Stack HCI. And so we're investigating what can be done to actually simplify the configuration that you need to make within your proxies and your firewalls, so that you don't have to potentially open all of these endpoints to have connectivity to Azure. And this is a much longer looking project, right? Something over the next year or so we'll try to make a reality. But in order to actually do so, we really need to better understand how you're using your proxies and how you're using your firewalls. So we have this short survey. It's 2 to 3 minutes. Really should not take very long. But if folks could fill out the survey, take the time to actually give us more information about the kinds of proxies and the kinds of firewalls you have in your environment, it will really help us come up with the right solution to this problem, so that we're not, breaking your existing proxies or firewalls, your existing tools that you have to manage your on-premises infrastructure. So please take the time, spend maybe 2 or 3 minutes to fill out that survey. Feel free to reach out to me directly if you have questions about this project. If you want to give feedback, want to share your requirements, we're actually all ears right now. I would love to hear from you. My email's here on the far right under contact, the last one. But yes, would really appreciate it if folks could fill that out. Thanks, Arnav. Thanks, Lior.
Thanks, Prasid. Thanks, folks.
All right.
That's everything.
Thanks so much, guys. Thank you, guys. All right. Automanage team, take us away.
Thanks, Lior. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and thanks for joining the call. I'm Akanksha, a PM on the Azure Automanage team. So today I have some quick updates to share about our machine best practices offering, and then my colleague Jody will talk about some Automanage machine config updates. So to start with, for folks who are new to Automanage or are hearing about it for the first time, the key goal of our service is to help simplify day-to-day server management tasks for servers that are connected through Azure Arc or are inside of Azure. So basically, what machine best practices does is we actually onboard, configure, as well as monitor these Azure best practices services throughout the lifetime of your machine. But today I want to focus on one of the key capabilities that you can leverage through Automanage, which is the ability to assign Azure security baselines through your Automanage profile. And that's applicable for both our built-in profiles, that is the production or dev test profile, or by creating a custom configuration profile. So these security baselines apply to both Windows as well as Linux environments, and they help with continuous monitoring of secure configuration, which is aligned with the Azure environment, and it can monitor it for you across your Azure hybrid as well as multi-cloud environment. So very excited to share that the Windows security baselines that you can apply on your machines through Azure Automanage is now aligned with the CIS benchmark. And what this essentially means is this newly released benchmark has the CIS recommended security configurations that align best with the Azure environment. So this capability basically makes it super easy for customers to go ahead and apply these CIS compliant baselines by leveraging an Automanage built-in or custom profile and selecting the machine configuration option, which can then enable you to securely monitor all your machines that are tied to that particular Automanage profile. So I've linked the GA the announcement blog, which you can follow along to read more about these baselines, and some other general resources to get started with Automanage machine best practices. And once again, we have a really easy enablement experience that you can leverage through the Azure portal in Automanage Center. You can also find Automanage in the table of contents for your Arc servers and use policies as well as templates to deploy this at scale. So that's a quick update from the Automanage machine best practices side. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Jody to talk about Automanage machine config.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, Akanksha. Really excited about that alignment to the new cloud native CIS benchmark. So on the Automanage machine config side of the house this morning, the main thing that we want to let everybody know about is that we actually have a new built-in policy to disable local user authentication. So basically what this does is it ensures that only Windows servers can be accessed through Azure Active Directory or a list of explicitly allowed users through the policy. So this will ensure improved overall security posture of your environment, and we're really excited to get some feedback while this is in preview. So if anybody is interested in trying it out or giving some more feedback, please feel free to reach out. The second thing I want to give you all today is the form that's listed on the aka.ms link below. I'll put it in the chat as well. But what we're really trying to do is get some feedback from customers that are using Azure Automation State Config for Windows and or machine config, and really get some information about what your current experience is and the things that you like and things that you're looking for in machine config. So I'll put that link in the chat and would really appreciate your engagement there as well. So thanks everybody, and thanks Akanksha.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Akasha. All right, Lance, data stuff, take us away.
Data stuff. Always happy to talk about that. So, hello everyone. I'm Lance Wright. I'm a senior product manager on the Azure Arc Data Services team, and I'll be going over a few topics with the group today. So I'm excited to be here. The first we'll talk about is the pay-as-you-go billing model that we announced at the PAS Summit a couple of weeks ago. So, PAS Summit was really exciting for us. In the databases org as a whole. We announced general availability for SQL Server 2022, and almost in the same breath, we also announced that SQL Server 22 would be the first instance of SQL Server, first version of SQL Server that would support a pay-as-you-go billing model. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that. As you can see on the screen here, we do have pay-as-you-go licensing that's enabled by Azure Arc. And you can see the pricing here, both for a standard edition and for enterprise edition, the monthly rate, and also broken down to the hourly rate. If you're getting your calculators out, yes, the hourly rate, if you run it 24/7 for the entire month, does add up to the monthly rate. And the big benefits here, we're really excited about this. This is giving our users and our customers more flexible licensing options. They can choose to, switch over to a consumption-based model versus paying for a perpetual SQL license. So this is great for our customers that are running more ad hoc workloads, or maybe they have a seasonal business, or maybe they only need their servers to be on for, during business hours, or maybe they have spikes in their usage and they can scale up and scale down. This is giving them, the ability to kind of, pay for the licensing, pay for their servers for their SQL servers rather, based on their consumption versus just paying all upfront for a SQL Server license. So no need for an upfront investment. It's kind of can be considered more of an operational expense versus a capital expenditure. I'll leave that to the accountants. And kind of the key business here, or the key use case here is we're starting to kind of synchronize our billing offering across, on-prem and in the cloud. So, pay-as-you-go licensing model, that was kind of more of a cloud concept. And now we're able to kind of bring that to all of our customers, regardless if they're running their SQL Server on cloud or on premises. They could even be in a third-party cloud. It's the same billing model from the SQL Server standpoint. So if we go to the next slide, the setup to enroll your SQL Server into a pay-as-you-go billing model is very straightforward. When you start to set up the SQL Server instance, you're going to see options to be able to enable the pay-as-you-go billing model through Azure. So one thing I will call out here is this SQL Server instance does have to be Arc-enabled and connected to Azure. But the setup wizard will walk you through that process. That's not something that you'll need to necessarily worry about. There's lots of documentation there at the link in the wizard that will step the users and the customers through the process. So it's pretty straightforward. Or the alternative option is you can enter in the product key, of course, if you paid for that. And one thing that I'll call out is you're not locked into pay-as-you-go or licensing. You can switch back and forth. All you have to do is relaunch the setup wizard and switch to the edition that you would prefer. So very exciting. We're excited to hear more and more customer use cases about using pay-as-you-go licensing for SQL Server 22. It was really exciting to talk to some customers at the past summit a couple of weeks ago, and there's definitely a lot of interest. So we're looking forward to hearing more. So if we go ahead to the next slide, I do have some updates from the Azure Arc Data Services portion, specifically around SQL Server and Postgres. So let's start with SQL Server on the next slide. So along with, so by Arc enabling SQL Server 2022, we are able to unlock some key features, and there's 3 that I want to talk about today. So with an Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server, you are able to use Azure Active Directory to authenticate into your SQL Server instance. So that makes it easier if you are an organization that is kind of running a more hybrid infrastructure, and you already have Azure Active Directory already enabled. You can leverage that Azure AAD to log into your SQL Server instances. And where that really comes into play is with Purview. Is instead of, so Microsoft Purview, just to give a background for those who are a little unaware, Microsoft Purview is a tool that enables our customers to gain visibility into their data assets across the organization. Those data assets can be across data centers, multi-cloud, your SaaS application data, it doesn't matter. And Microsoft Purview essentially helps our users and our customers to secure the access to the data, and safeguard access their data and manage access to sensitive data across all of their apps and endpoints. And really, this empowers our customers to govern, protect, and manage their data in new and comprehensive ways. And what that means is our users are now empowered to assign permissions using Azure Active Directory at scale without having to write T-SQL commands or having to set up logins on the SQL Server itself. So by Arc enabling your server, you're able to enroll that server into Microsoft Purview and gain better protection of your data assets and kind of simplify the data access process. And then the third key benefit that I want to talk about is, by Arc enabling a SQL Server, and like I said, with SQL Server 22, that's kind of the first SQL Server version where Azure Arc is enabled as part of the version. You're able to see those databases as a resource in Azure, making it easier to see your entire SQL Server estate, regardless if it's on-prem, in the cloud, in a third-party cloud. It doesn't matter. You can get visibility into into those resources in Azure. So you have kind of a single control plane to be able to visualize your entire SQL Server estate. So those are the updates for SQL Server. If you have any questions, I would encourage you to reach out to my my colleague Raj. His email is on the previous slide. He can definitely help you out. And I'll close out my talk here today talking about Postgres. So Postgres is in public preview today. And what we're looking to provide is through Arc-enabled Postgres, we're looking to provide similar capabilities as our Arc SQL MI offering in terms of management capabilities. A pretty common question we get is what version of Postgres do we support? The Arc-enabled Postgres is version 14. And you are effectively able to deploy Postgres on-prem and be able to manage that Postgres instance from the Azure portal and in the CLI. It shows up in Azure as a custom location. And we do support core functionality for a single server version today. You can enable automated backups through the CLI and through the portal. We are working on point-in-time restore to be coming soon, so stay tuned for announcements on that. And then for those that are looking to kind of measure and manage their Postgres instances, we do have built-in Grafana and Kibana enabled on those. We will support Azure Monitor coming soon, so that's another announcement to keep a lookout for. We do support all common extensions, and in fact, one of the links over on the right-hand side is the list of all the extensions that we support. I think there's like 30 extensions on that list, so it's a pretty comprehensive list. But do note that we only support the default configurations today. So the call to action here that we have for the community at large, since the Postgres Arc-enabled Postgres is in public preview, we are looking to get some feedback from the community. Let us know, install the Postgres instance. Let us know what's working for you. Let us know what features are missing. Let us know which of those missing features are most important to you and why. I have my contact for Dhananjay over there on the right-hand side. He's kind of the main PM over Arc-enabled Postgres. Would definitely recommend reaching out to him with any feedback that you have as we start to refine the product for general availability in the coming months. So thank you so much for your time today. Back to you, Leo.
Thanks so much, Lance, for the comprehensive update on the data services and the SQL Server side of the house. With that, that's the end of our topics for today. I'll, feel free to unmute yourself or feel free to drop if you don't have any questions. And we also want to wish you everyone happy holidays if you're celebrating. And like I mentioned, we're not going to have a community meetup call next month. I'm going to take a break and then come back in January. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop it in the chat or unmute yourself. We're going to stay put for a second, see if you have any questions. Yeah, Harmist, I hope I'm not butchering your name. Is it Wendy or is it Terms? I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, Wendy.
I think Wendy. Hey, Wendy.
Hey, so very good session today. Just a quick question on the pay-as-you-go, which has to be Azure Arc-enabled. And can you just remind me, I know SQL Server 2022 comes with Azure Arc-enabled built in, and I believe you can also do that with SQL Server 2000. Does it go all the way back to 2014, I guess is my question.
Yeah, you can Arc-enable a SQL Server 2012 and up.
2012, perfect. Thank
Yep.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the question, Wendy. I also see another question. Is it Raghuram? I hope, again, apologies if I'm butchering anyone's name.
Yes. Yeah. So this is regarding the same cost model. So one of the things is, yes, we saw the cost modeling of SQL Server, Arc-enabled SQL Server. So would it be comparable or would it be the similar in lines to Arc-enabled SQL managed instance?
That's a good question. They do. So Arc-enabled SQL managed instance does have its is also charged on a pay-as-you-go basis, and they have a different pricing tier. Like the prices are different between SQL MI and SQL Server 22. So.
Okay. Sure.
Thanks. Does that answer your question? Are you looking?
Yeah. And where can I get is there an information available on the portal or on the overview page of the offering?
Of the pricing model for Arc SQL MI?
Yeah. Yes.
I'll dig that up for you and I'll post it in the chat here in just a second.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah.
Sure.
And this is on the Azure Arc-enabled SQL managed instance, right? And not the thank you.
Correct. Yep.
Thanks for the question. I don't see any more hands. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. If not, I'm going to start the calling.
Yeah. Hey, sorry, this is Wendy again. I don't think I've got chat enabled in my Teams. I'm very interested in the link that gentleman just asked for. Is there another way we can get that link to the information if we can't see chat?
So Wendy, I'm gonna basically after the call, we're gonna pop some links in the chat of the community meetup Teams channel.
Okay.
In addition to what we have currently in the chat here. Okay.
Thank you.
So so make sure to follow up on that one. Yeah. All right. I see one more hand, I believe. Is it Michael? Or Mikhail? Mikhail, I see
Hey,
your
sorry
hand.
about that. Oh, so the question I had was, again, around the pay-as-you-go for SQL Server 22. Will there be new guidance in terms of how best to scale up and down? Or are we still going to require downtime for if you're adding and removing cores to a server? Just curious how that's envisioned as far as scale up, scale down.
In terms of guidance or recommendations, is that what you're asking, Michael?
Oh, right. So in terms of guidance, or is there any new functionality? Is it still going to be an offline operation where you're going to need to reboot the server to make the change?
Oh, that one I'm not sure on. I would have to circle back with you on that.
Okay. I was just thinking about things from a scale perspective, because I've worked with organizations before that this type of functionality would be amazing. So seasonal businesses, like you had mentioned, I'm just curious what the lead up to season and then the taper down after season would look like. Would they have to take an outage or schedule downtime to make that change?
Got it. Okay. Yeah, good question. Let me circle back with you. I'll take down your contact information and I will get in touch with you on that one. So your question is, how does the user need to prepare for scaling up, scaling down? If they're doing the pay-as-you-go model, do they need to restart, that kind of thing?
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Thanks so much. John, I see your comment. Let me follow up on the chat. I'm not sure what's wrong there, but let me follow up on this one, okay? In terms of the link is wrong for the Jumpstart roadmap. I'll take a look. Not sure. Okie doke. I don't see any more questions, so I think we're gonna call this off. Going once, twice. All right, cool. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you back in January, and have a good rest of the day. Bye, everyone.